नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 27. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrutyur dhruvam janma mrutasya cha tasmat apariharyerdhe natvam shochitumarhasi. So in this set of verses, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna why one should do his duty, or why he should do his duty, because for a person who is born, Jatasya, he mrutyur dhruvaha. Dhruva means fixed up or certain. So mrutyuhu is certain for a person who has taken birth. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrutyuhu. And for a person who dies, mrutasya dhruvam janma, next birth is going to be fixed. In the sense, there will be a next birth based on one's activities. As Prabhupada says in the purport, one has to take birth according to one's activities of life. Based on the activities you do in this life, it determines your next life. So sometimes people say, oh, if everything is destined in this life, I can go on doing anything, I still get what I want, because everything is destined. But what you have to know also is, if you do nonsense activities, your next birth will also be nonsense. Because you have to pay for what you have performed. According to the activities of this life, karmana daivanetrena yantur dehopapattaye. So, dhruvam janma mrutasya cha. For a person who dies, there is another birth, dhruvam janma. So therefore Krishna says, tasmat, therefore, apariharyerdhe natvam shochitum arhasi. Apariharya means that which cannot be avoided. This, for a person who is dying, there is another birth. For a person who is living, there is going to be death. You cannot stop this. Nobody can stop this. This is the law of nature. Apariharyerdhe. So there was this old man who didn't want to die. So he went to his son, who happened to be a great sage. So his son was in meditation, and the father disturbed his meditation. The son woke up and asked him, "My dear father, what do you want?" And the father was little terrified, as if death is approaching him. And he told his son, "My dear son, you're a great sadhu, and you can probably help me overcome death. I'm scared of death. I feel as if I'm dying. And can you please stop my death from happening?" And this sadhu said, I cannot stop your death, but I can find out how much more life you have. And so he said, "How do you do that?" "No, I have another friend, but he's not in this planet. He's in the planet of Yamaraj. Maybe he can help look into your lifespan." So he invokes his sadhu who is in Yama planet. And the sadhu comes and appears and asks, "Hey, my friend, how are you doing? How is your practices and all that?" And the sadhu says, thank you for coming when I invoked you. So my father is very scared of death, and I want to see if you can help. Can you tell me how much lifespan he has? And the sadhu says, yes, I can find out from Chitragupta, who is in our planet, who maintains the activities of any person, and he knows when he will die. And he invokes Chitragupta to come. And then, obliged by the sadhu's request, he comes. And then he looks into the uh, the written history of this man and says, "Oh, I'm surprised and shocked that your father, this old man, does not have death in the foreseeable future." And this father becomes very happy. But he says the only condition that he will die, it is mentioned here, is that in a rare occurrence where the sage from earthly planet and a sage from Yama planet, they happen to meet together, that's the only instance he will die. And then the old man dies. And you see how even if somebody has got a great boon that he will never die, somehow or the other, the law of nature is that he will die. Because death is inevitable for anybody who has got this material body. Jatasya hi dhruva mrityuhu. Similarly, if you have not cultivated Krishna consciousness and thus not be eligible to go back to Godhead in a spiritual body, you will get another birth. This is apariharyate. You cannot avoid this. So therefore, Krishna is saying, Natvam sochitum arhasi. Don't lament for this unavoidable thing and do your duty. You are a Kshatriya, and for a Kshatriya to remain non-violent is not his duty. Violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. Of course, Prabhupada also mentions that just because somebody has to die, it does not support unnecessary murder. It does not support unnecessary slaughter and war. So, but at the same time, when it is needed, what needs to be done has to be done. So, we have to follow the order of the Supreme. We should not hesitate to do our duty. A Kshatriya should not hesitate to do his duty if it means to kill his enemies. If he avoids the duty, that will actually bring sinful reactions for avoiding the duty, not doing the duty. So the point is, you have to fight for Krishna. If you are a Kshatriya, you fight for Krishna. If you are a Brahmana, you do your duty to preach for Krishna, to learn for Krishna. Even a Vaishya, do your business for Krishna. A Sudra, do your service for Krishna. So in this way, whatever is your occupation, you do that duty for Krishna, then there won't be any sinful reaction. If you don't do that duty, then there will be sinful reaction. So Srila Prabhupada, you see his own example. He fought for Krishna always. He didn't remain silent. He didn't avoid the order of his spiritual master to go and preach in the Western countries. Like Arjuna, he wanted to avoid confrontation. He wanted to avoid the problem, run away from the problem. Running away from the problem does not solve the problem, isn't it? You have to face it. You have to learn how to solve it. Take the guidance from the superior. So if you are following the order of the superior will give the guidance also how to solve the problem. So we have to have confidence that I am ordered to do this. Therefore, because it is not me who has taken this up, it is the order of my authority, who in turn is getting this from Krishna. through the disciplic succession. So I'll be successful by doing the duty. So Prabhupada also mentions that this does not, just because a person who dies will take birth, it is inevitable. So it does not support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. So a Vaishnava, he does not hurt even a small ant. There is an example during Prabhupada's time. As we know, Srila Prabhupada had to struggle very hard to build this temple in Bombay, in Juhu. The first struggle was to get the land, and the next struggle was to get the permission to build the land, build the temple. And there were so many struggles to overcome the local opposition. The owner had cheated, and so on and so forth. And they get the permits, and usually the permits often include many conditions. Although they give the permission is not actually valid until one fulfills the conditions. So one of the conditions that was put in that permit was that they had an internal access road of a certain width. According to the length of the road, it had to have certain width for the vehicles and so on and so forth. So it just so happened that right where the access road was supposed to go, there were some palm trees. So once when Prabhupada came to Juhu, after being away from some time, he noticed that one or two trees had been cut. And he was very concerned and even upset. And he asked, "Why did you cut these trees?" And then the disciples, they thought they had the perfect answer. Oh, they said, "Oh, we had to, Prabhupada, this is the condition. We had to build the temple, and to get the permit, we had to cut the trees which came on the way of the road." And then Prabhupada said, "No, you go to the municipality and tell them that it's against our religion to cut the trees." And the disciples, they followed. And the officers, to their surprise, even after arguing, they finally relented. So you see how Prabhupada, once he was in Tehran, and he said, "I have seen they have trees in the middle of the streets. So we can also have trees in the middle of our street." And so finally they got that approval, and the devotees say that these the trees that were protected, the one tree that Prabhupada protected, still standing with asphalt all around it. So you see how a Vaishnava, how much care and love he has for all living entities, not just a human being. As Prabhupada often says, Praja means one who has taken birth in this land. It doesn't matter it is a human being or an animal. Everybody is a Praja. The government is supposed to protect everybody as much as possible. So it is not that a Kshatriya will commit unnecessary violence, taking this, oh, anyway, everybody has to die. Nor the, now another question can come. So can the terrorists also justify that they are killing on the authority of God? Because that's what they claim. Oh, according to our God, our this thing, anybody who doesn't follow our religion or who does this has to be killed. Therefore, we are killing all these people. They also can claim, just like Arjuna is being asked to kill, they can also claim. What we need to understand is, if somebody is actually following the authority of God, then they should display symptoms of God realized souls. They should display symptoms of detachment. They should show symptoms of love of God. chanting his holy names always. Satatam kirtayanto mam, yatantascha drudabrataha. They should be free from sense gratification, no attachment to matter. But we see that they don't display any of that. In fact, their goal is to go to heaven and enjoy unlimited sense gratification. So, phalena parichayate. Judge a thing by its result. So, we have to, if one claims, first of all, we have to understand whether that authority is bona fide, whether they are coming in the disciplic succession. And secondly, we have to judge whether by following that authority you are making progress. Otherwise, your activity is not bona fide. Interestingly, when Prabhupada came to the West, that was the time when US was waging war in Vietnam and people were being drafted to go fight the war, and there was so much of agitation throughout the country, especially amongst the youngsters, and whom Srila Prabhupada targeted to preach Krishna consciousness. So in one of the classes, several classes, he was talking about how, like in this particular verse, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight because death is inevitable. You have to do your duty to fight. And so these youngsters, the hippies who were attending these classes, in one particular class, they were asking questions to Prabhupada. So why God, of all people, who should be a bearer of peace and happiness, is encouraging somebody to fight and kill people, quite against the natural thinking that God should be peace loving and peace giving. So Prabhupada was trying to explain to them that the war is just one mechanism where people will be killed. It's not that because there is no war, let's say you stop the war. Does it mean you stop the suffering of the people? Can it stop the communal violences we see every day, the riots we see every day, the deadly diseases we see every day? The government failing to stop the evil elements, and thereby the evil elements flourishing and causing so much of pain and suffering to the humanity. Can it stop just because you stopped the war? No. The war is a consequence of our sinful activity. As long as you go on hurting poor animals for your sense gratification, for your tongue gratification, how will laws of nature stop acting, stop giving you reaction for killing these innocent creatures? The government also has to pay, the people have to pay. So if you elect bad governance, that is one of the problems of democracy. The person who is standing itself may not be qualified. And because all Sudras are voting, he will vote for another Sudra who does not have any Krishna conscious principles. And what is one of the effects of your sinful reactions come to fruition, and you have to suffer for it. So it's not that you stop the war and there will be a stoppage of suffering. So one has to understand that. So war is just one symptom of the suffering of this world. So the real principle is dharmic war. If the leader is Krishna conscious, he is following the instructions of Krishna, getting the authority from Krishna, and it is said that Prabhupada explains in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita that there are 6 kinds of aggressors, and they should be responded in a degree that they can even kill that aggressor. There won't be any sin. Like one usurps one's house, one puts fire to one's house, one steals one property forcibly, one takes away one's wife. So there are these 6 kinds of aggressors, and they should be immediately killed. So if you are the king and you're protecting the country from the aggression, you're justified in in killing the opponents and waging the dharmic war. So like that, there are rules of dharmic war, that Kurukshetra is actually being fought on the grounds of dharma and is directed by Krishna himself. So as long as we dovetail, or the leader dovetails his actions in will of the Lord, then that is justified. Otherwise, it is just the reactions of our karmic activities manifesting as war. So ultimately, the leader has to become Krishna conscious, Rajarshi. Otherwise, it is just the laws of nature giving reactions for us, and we have to pay for it. So, as long as the mass of people don't become Krishna conscious, they will always be suffering in terms of the war or a drought or earthquakes, natural disasters, so much of communal violence, and so on and so forth. So we have to bring Krishna to the center. Only when Krishna comes to the center, there can be peace and happiness for everyone. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made this process of Krishna consciousness in this age very easy. It's not that, you know, in the earlier days, yes, there were Kshatriyas. Now, Janmana Jayate Sudra. Most of them are born as Sudra. The simple duty is to serve and get some income and live. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't worry about whether you are a Sudra or a Kshatriya or a Brahmana. You just be engaged in whatever occupation you are. It doesn't matter. You don't even know whether you are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Sudra. Whatever is your occupation that somehow you are placed in, just be engaged in that. But you cultivate the process of hearing about Krishna. Gnane prayasamudapasya namanta eva jivanti shanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam sthane sthita shrutigatam tanuban manobhir ye prayaso jita jitopyasitais trilokyam. Sthane sthitaha, you be situated in your sthiti, in your occupation, in your position, but you hear about Krishna. Sthane sthitaha shrutigatam. You hear about Krishna, and thereby gradually you will conquer Krishna, who is said to be unconquerable. So continue to hear the topics about Krishna from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it doesn't matter who you are, everything will be adjusted. Our mind becomes clear simply by hearing. And if we continue the process chanting Krishna's name, practically we can see how our heart is becoming cleansed, how we are making spiritual progress, so on and so forth. So everybody can follow this and get out of the illusion, just like Arjuna has fought out this illusion, taking shelter of Krishna. The other example we see, great example in our history, is Parikshit Maharaj. He was cursed to die in 7 days. So he prepared to die. He didn't retaliate. Oh, he didn't become so upset that he is going to die, what to do. He didn't become agitated. He resorted it as the will of the Lord. Okay, if I have to die, so be it. Everybody has to die. So he has asked for great assembly of learned people, saintly personalities. They gathered there. He didn't ask, oh, all of you, please suggest a mechanism to protect and how I can survive. No, he didn't ask that. So he was asking, what is my duty now that I'm going to die? What is my duty at the time of death? And everybody was suggesting different things. Oh, you should perform this kind of activity, karma kanda, or to atone sinful reactions. Or somebody was saying gnana kanda, you should merge yourself in impersonal Brahman, so on and so forth. So all kinds of ideas were coming up. You practice gnana, you overcome sinful reactions by gnana and merge into Brahman, and so on and so forth. But nothing was resolving. Nobody was able to come to a proper conclusion. Karma, gnana, yoga. And meantime, there was one personality who approached the assembly, and very unusual personality, very strange looking personality. He was actually naked, very young, and his hair was scattered here and there. And there were village children running behind him, thinking he is a crazy man, teasing him. But when he approached the assembly, all these saintly personalities recognized that he was a great sage, unparalleled. And everybody got up to offer their respects, except his father, Vyasadeva, and Narada Muni. So, and everybody, naturally, they concluded that he is the person who can actually give the verdict. What is one's duty at the time of death? And everybody selected that he should be the person who should be guiding and instructing Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj, he got up and he washed his lotus feet and he worshipped him, and then he inquired, please tell me, my dear spiritual master, what should be my duty now that I have just 7 days to die? And then Sukadeva Goswami, he basically, to summarize, 7 days is actually a long time, no problem. Because in history, there was this Khatwanga Maharaj. He's from the earthly planet, but he was such a great king that he has been hired by the heavenly planets to fight the demons, and he succeeded. And they gave him a boon. And he said, I want to know how much life I have. And they said, you only have a moment to live according to the higher planet's calculation. So immediately he came back and became Krishna conscious and perfected his life. So similarly, he said, yes, you have to prepare for that moment of death by becoming Krishna conscious. Because death you cannot avoid, as you have rightly realized. So, if by doing our duty, at the same time we become Krishna conscious, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyaja. By doing our duties, yudhya, for Arjuna it is yuddha, for us it is different, whatever is our occupation, but at the same time we have to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Then we become perfect. I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments, you can unmute yourself. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.